Democrats in Congress have called for the impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, 160. And she, of course, oversees both ICE and CBP as they wage their immigration crackdown in Minneapolis and communities across the country, hence the call for her impeachment.
Is a despicable, corrupt, pathological liar. We've seen her slander not just one, but two American citizens, patriotic Americans who were killed without justification on the streets of Minneapolis in the last few weeks. She's deeply unqualified. She never should have been confirmed to begin with by Senate Republicans. And House Democrats have called for her to be fired immediately. And in the event that she is not terminated, we are prepared to initiate impeachment proceedings against her in the House of Representatives.
What happens when the agency designed to protect a nation starts being accused of killing its own citizens? What happens when a Homeland Security Secretary is called a pathological liar by members of Congress? When more than 160 lawmakers demand her impeachment, when federal agents are accused of operating like a paramilitary force on American streets? And what happens when both sides of the political war agree on one thing? Something in Minneapolis has gone too far. Tonight, we're not just covering a news story. We're pulling apart the machinery behind it. Because what began as a raid may end as a political earthquake. Stay with me, because this story isn't really about immigration. It's about who controls force inside America. Before we move forward, just a quick request. If you enjoy deep, research-based insider stories, the kind that mainstream media often doesn't explain clearly, then please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe Chris Show. Because here, we don't just repeat headlines, we uncover the system behind the story. Now, let's return to our investigation. It's freezing cold in Minneapolis. Crowds gather outside federal buildings, not waving party flags, waving photographs of the dead, two American citizens.
ICE out! ICE out! ICE out! ICE out! Minnesota knows how to handle ICE!
Killed in encounters involving federal immigration agents, their names now whispered in vigils and shouted in congressional hearings. And in the middle of that frozen chaos stands Congressman Seth Moulton, a veteran, a lawmaker, standing with protesters, breath visible in the cold.
What we just saw this morning on the streets of Minneapolis is another outright murder by federal officials. And let me just be clear. Those federal ICE officers are absolute cowards. I'm a Marine veteran standing here telling you to your face they are unprofessional, pathetic cowards.
He says something quietly devastating. I've talked to Republicans who admit privately this is wrong, but they're too scared to say it publicly. Too scared, not of crime, not of immigrants, of Trump's base, of their own party, of losing their careers. That is the human core of this story. A government agency under fire. A political party paralyzed by fear. Families grieving, and an entire country watching. So here's the mystery. If ICE is so unpopular, if these incidents are so shocking, if even Republicans privately admit wrongdoing, why is almost nobody crossing the line publicly? Why is Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, still in office? Why is impeachment being discussed, yet no removal happening? Why are Democrats shouting, "Prosecute ICE," while Republicans quietly whisper, "You're right"? What's holding the system in place? What force is stronger than outrage, stronger than grief, stronger than video evidence, stronger than public sentiment? We're told public sentiment is everything. Abraham Lincoln said it. So if sentiment has turned, what's stopping action? It's not just about ICE. It's not even just about immigration. It's about power architecture. Behind the protests, behind the hearings, behind the shouting on cable news, there is a single reality. The Department of Homeland Security now controls enormous independent funding. Senator John Fetterman lays it out bluntly. ICE already has $178 billion available. Unlimited money, passed in a bill that no Democrat voted for. Even if Congress votes against new funding, ICE doesn't lose funding. Even if the government shuts down, ICE continues operating. Even if lawmakers protest, ICE still has money, agents, weapons, authority. This is why defunding fights are symbolic. This is why shutdown threats change nothing. This is why impeachment is the only real lever left. And this is why Kristi Noem matters, because she is the political head of a machine that no longer needs congressional permission to operate.
Yeah, well, let's just describe this to your viewers. Now, this vote will not defund or change ICE in any way. They have $178 billion available for their funding. And that was made possible after the big, beautiful bill, which I did not vote for. Not a single Democrat in D.C. voted for that. So they have effectively unlimited money right now.
That's the true reveal. A federal enforcement agency operating with massive funding, weak oversight, and political protection. That's why some Democrats now say, not reform, not oversight, prosecution. If Democrats succeed in impeaching Noem, it would be the first time a Homeland Security Secretary is removed over domestic enforcement abuses. It would signal ICE is no longer untouchable. Federal agents can be criminally investigated. Presidential authority over enforcement can be checked. But if they fail, then a different message goes out, that federal law enforcement can operate aggressively, kill American citizens in disputed encounters, face public outrage, and continue unchanged. That Congress can protest, but not control. That impeachment threats are noise, and that fear inside the Republican Party remains stronger than evidence. Because remember what Seth Moulton said, they know the truth, they're just scared to say it publicly. If fear remains the governing force, then accountability dies. This isn't the first time America has seen this pattern. A law enforcement agency expands power, justified by crisis, protected by politics, shielded by funding, resistant to oversight. We've seen it after 9/11. We've seen it with the Patriot Act. We've seen it with domestic surveillance. We've seen it with militarized policing. Always the same cycle. Fear expansion, normalization abuse, denial, outrage, partial repeat. ICE was born from post-9/11 restructuring, created to defend borders, gradually militarized, gradually politicized, gradually weaponized. Now it stands accused of acting like a paramilitary force inside U.S. cities. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries uses that exact phrase. They are conducting themselves like a paramilitary organization. That is not accidental wording. That is a warning. Because paramilitary forces inside democracies always trigger one historical question. Who controls the gun? Now comes the explosion moment. Three political forces collide. Progressive Democrats calling to abolish ICE. Moderate Democrats like Fetterman warning against symbolic shutdowns. Republicans privately acknowledging misconduct but publicly silent. Add to that, 160 Democrats calling for impeachment. 2 Republican senators, Murkowski and Tillis, breaking ranks. Faith leaders calling it a moral emergency. Protesters in the streets. And a president promising to watch the investigation, while his Justice Department is accused of being politicized. This is combustible. One more incident, one more video, one more death, and the dam breaks. Because public sentiment, once fully turned, becomes unstoppable. Jeffries says, public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. That's not rhetoric. That's strategy. They are building the case not just in Congress, but in the minds of Americans. So take a breath. Step back from the shouting, from the protests, from the partisan noise. What do we actually have? A federal agency with vast independent funding, accusations of unlawful killings, congressional calls for impeachment, bipartisan private concern, an administration refusing to remove its official, investigations demanded, a shutdown threat that changes nothing. Underneath all of this is a simple constitutional question. Who is above the law? Because if ICE agents are not accountable, if DHS leadership is not removable, if Congress cannot restrain enforcement, then the balance of power has shifted. Quietly. Gradually, but decisively. Which brings us to the bigger question. Is America witnessing a temporary political scandal or the early stage of a structural transformation in how state power operates inside the country? Are we seeing a crisis that ends with reform or the normalization of federal paramilitary enforcement? Are we heading toward a restored balance or an era where enforcement agencies outlast elected officials? And perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all, if both parties agree the system is broken, why is no one truly able to fix it? And that's where we leave the story. For now. Because impeachment proceedings may begin, or they may stall. Investigations may reveal misconduct, or they may be buried. Public outrage may grow, or it may fade. But one thing is certain, Minneapolis has become a flashpoint, not just for immigration, not just for policing, but for the future of federal authority in America. And the next move, from Congress, from the courts, or from the streets, will decide whether this moment becomes a turning point or a warning ignored. So the question isn't whether Kristi Noem survives this scandal. The question is, what kind of country emerges on the other side of it? Fade out, music, snow falling, protest candle flickers. If this crisis escalates, possible impacts include political impact. First, successful impeachment of a DHS Secretary in history. Major fracture inside Republican unity ICE, becoming a central 2026 midterm issue. Immigration policy, realignment, institutional impact. Increased oversight over DHS. Possible restructuring of ICE. New federal rules on domestic enforcement operations. Public impact. Growing distrust in federal law enforcement. Increased protests and civil disobedience. Faith organizations entering political advocacy, long-term impact redefinition of federal power inside states' court rulings limiting agency autonomy, precedent for prosecuting federal officers. In short, this isn't just a news cycle. It's a stress test of American democracy.